Hi everyone, it's Brenda here. We're back for another episode of Three Uniques. I'm excited to introduce you to Stephanie Redivo. Hi Steph, how are you doing today?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm so excited to talk to you today about your Three Uniques. Before we do though, just a little bit about Stephanie. So she is the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Lead at TransLink, which is basically like responsible for, I mean, you can tell them more stuff, but basically responsible for all of our public transportation in the province. So buses, subways, everything. So it's pretty cool, big operation. And I've also learned that Steph is obsessed with making the perfect chocolate chip cookie. So I'm curious today if you have perfected that over COVID lockdown in the spring. So Steph, do you want to tell a little bit more about yourself to everybody?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here. So I come from SAP. I was at SAP for almost 20 years and recently moved over to TransLink as their first equity, diversity, and inclusion program lead. So running various programs and initiatives and strategies for almost 8,000 employees. And what's fascinating now is that, I mean, I've always taken transit, but I look at transit in a whole new way now. And if I can put a bit of a plug in there, we are going to mandatory masks for safety for everybody, please. So yeah, I'll just throw that in there. Yeah. So.
And I've actually, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. I've actually been seeing on Instagram and people saying that people are now starting to wear masks. Like there's a lot of diligence around that. So that's a good thing. I think people got the message and they really care.
Yeah. And for those that can't too, the great thing I think that's very understanding and that TransLink did is there's cards that if you're not able to wear a mask for whatever reason, you have a card that you can get that basically says you're sort of exempt in case, in case SkyTrain attendants or anybody asks, you have a card.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you ready to share your three uniques with us?
I am.
Okay, let's go. Let's hear them.
Okay. It did take me a little while. And when I did ask, you have to choose who you ask, who your three uniques are, some family, some friends. So my three uniques, teacher, connector, and positivity.
Nice. Okay. Let's see that's the top. So teacher.
So teacher. So this one and two, this came through sort of the standout assessment that I took probably about a year ago. This is sort of my second time. Teacher really being that there is sort of, I guess my background is education and learning. And I really care about people and how they learn and sort of the teacher, sort of the one sort of statement around the teacher component is that people's performance improves when they're around me. And that, I really want to sort of help people be the best they can be, in that I give that sort of psychological safety so people can that you're learning, you're failing, you're relearning, and it's a safe place to be. So yeah, that's nice. The teacher.
That's awesome. And how did you like doing the standout assessment?
Oh, you know what? I guess it's one of those things, I have a psychology and sociology degree, so it's like really all about the self-reflection and things like that. So anything that helps me sort of get a really good understanding of myself. Yeah, I really liked it. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I actually did it in the spring as it's just something like while I was going through sort of physical distancing and COVID, being kind of locked down at home, I did it. And Marcus Buckingham was like talking about it and promoting it on his Instagram. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll sign up for it. Yeah. It was great. I really liked the assessment. It was a fun process going through it.
I know. And then you find little bits of things that you may not have known that you do naturally anyways, right? When you read some of the things. So yeah.
Nice. Okay. So what's your second unique?
Second is also from the standout assessment, and that's the connector. So I get super excited. So one of the things, like I do love making connections with people. I love to chat with new people and find it's just my mind works that way where it's like, oh, if I'm talking to somebody and let's say they want to get into the equity, diversity, and inclusion space, I'll be like, oh, you need to talk to so-and-so. Or if they're like, oh, I need to find another UX designer, I need to chat with somebody. I constantly have sort of, I feel like this resource of people available to me that I want to share and connect because I want to make things bigger and better, right? Like that's what's the saying? The sum is greater than the parts. Is that the analogy? Yeah.
I got it.
It's one of those things you read right away and you're like, yes. And then you say it and you're like, maybe not, but that's what I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll go with it. It works. Well, I do know that about you because you and I have been connected for a number of years, like on LinkedIn, just through mutual connections. And then you reached out to me and said, "Hey, let's actually meet up for lunch." And we had this great lunch, and then we've just kept in contact. And you're also a speaker at a number of conferences. Like, I always see your name somewhere on a panel or a list of speakers in the Vancouver area talking about diversity, inclusion. So I think it's great for you to be able to get out there and talk about your point of view.
Yeah, and I think it's really, I mean, part of the reason why I think naturally I'm a connector is also, I think in my career, I think I didn't have a lot of people potentially sponsoring me. And it was one of those conscious efforts that I really wanted to make sure anybody that I work with, I want to support and sort of make sure that they get everything that they need. So that's kind of like, I really do feel it's one of those important sort of values, characteristics of me for sure.
I love that. I love that too.
Yeah.
Not that it's just like, hey, there's like, I'm connecting so that I get the payback, but you're looking at it like, how do I pay this forward to other people?
Totally, totally. And it always comes back. Like, it always comes back. The person that you help out will then help somebody else because you showed your sort of your generosity. So, yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And your third unique.
So the third one around positivity. So again, I am always, it really is, the glass is always half full. And I just, I think of this, the work that I do around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And sometimes I kind of imagine the game of the various barriers, and you need to sort of move and sway and find new ways and new solutions. And I'm all like, looking at it from a positive perspective is so important. So yeah, a lot of people think I'm extremely positive. I also feel like with this work too, it can be quite heavy. And so bringing in a bit of lightheartedness and some fun with it, I think is important. And that's, I did go earlier on this year, I was trying to think of how can I bring in equity, diversity, and inclusion with fun and baking, which you talk about the obsessed. So yeah, I went on a 30-day baking challenge earlier on this year and documented with a new cookie every day, along with a simple, equity, diversity, and inclusion tip, so that people can see the cookie I made. And some were lovely cookies, and also some did not turn out, but that's how it is.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think that's how it is too. That's a funny story with the cookie parallel. I think that's how it is absolutely with diversity and inclusion. So many people they want to do good with it. They want to understand more. And then yet there's this apprehension of like, what happens if I get it wrong? What happens if I say the wrong thing? What happens if I flub something up and by accident I insult someone and that wasn't my intention? And I think like just continue to lean into that, right? Because there's probably some belief systems in there too about, saying the wrong thing or doing the right thing or whatever. And just, keep learning, keep, exposing yourself, keep talking. And if you make a mistake, acknowledge it, right? Just say, hey, you know what? I'm learning. I'm sorry. I'll do better.
It's funny you say that because literally the other day, I guess last week I posted about pronouncing somebody's name right. And then of course, yesterday I'm talking to a colleague and I pronounced their name wrong. And they're like, oh, it's this. And I just said, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. And I repeated it to make sure that I got the correct pronunciation. And then I jokingly said, and see, that's easy. You just apologize, sincere apology, and we move on, So, yeah.
Just continually learning. So what have you seen like on the topic of sort of diversity, equity, diversity, and inclusion, the field that you really work in? What have you seen really in the last like few months as far as like your own learning, your own approach around it? Because obviously there's been some really heavy issues coming out of COVID, people having access to care, obviously the incident with George Floyd and all the things that have sort of come out from that, Breonna Taylor, but just even in your own like personal journey around learning and just even advancing your own skill set in this field, like what have you been practicing or diving into?
Thanks so much for asking. I really the death of George Floyd, and I do call it that the whole world experienced 8 minutes and 46 seconds of trauma, because most of us probably either saw snippets of it or the entire video. And I really, it hit me in the sense of the guilt, and I will call it, the white person guilt, around what am I doing, and, around anti-racism, and, and really learning and understanding and making mistakes, which again, it's easy to say, hey, we're going to make mistakes, but that feeling in that core in you when you make a mistake can feel really yucky.
Mm-hmm.
But it's part of the journey. But we need to get there. And so, I mean, I've been doing a ton of reading, a lot of the different podcasts, again, looking at sort of Instagram around who was I following, and a really big component as well, and being in Vancouver, it's like I've got the Black owned businesses in Vancouver to really look into who should I be supporting that I haven't been supporting before. And as well as the Black owned businesses, but Indigenous owned businesses, so, I think of Massey Books, an Indigenous bookstore in Gastown. There's also, I mean, I do wear perfume. I quite like perfume. There's this Bailey fragrance. I think she's out of Halifax. And I would say, what, I'm doing it, of course, with the intention to sort of, to continue. This isn't like I'm just doing this to support for a month or two. Like, I have a long way to go, as do all of us, right? But I think we continue having these conversations. We continue reading and listening to different podcasts. Yeah. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah. If you want me to share a few resources too, I can kind of share a few as well. I don't know if you sort of, as well.
Yeah, send them to me, and I can add them to some of the links for people, like in the YouTube channel or LinkedIn, because this will show up on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. So you can definitely share it in the links for people to reference. So awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
What are the plans for the back half of the year? Like, what are some things that, like, when you're thinking about TransLink and the work that you're doing, I don't know if you can divulge some of that, but just even like, kind of top two things that you're going to be really, I guess, sinking your teeth into.
Yeah, I think with being the first, it's really, for me, it's really trying to understand the culture and get to know the culture and talk to as many people. I joke that I'd like to meet with 8,000 employees, because I think everybody brings a different perspective. Mm-hmm. I also think, just because I am the first, there has been some work done, right? There's sort of there's a grassroots group that has done some amazing work to help sort of, I think, almost set the foundation for me to get to TransLink, which I'm really appreciative. I think the piece around education and awareness is really sort of the focus currently right now. And what does equity, diversity, and inclusion look like at TransLink? And so that everybody has that common language and around it and feel comfortable speaking to it will be, it's really sort of the focus right now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. And now let's get to a really serious topic, the cookie. So what have you learned? Is it the butter? Is it sifting? Is it like the type of paint you use? Like what's the
deal on the, So, okay. So the cookie recipe that I make, and I've been making for years, and I have been told I make the best cookie. And so like by multiple people, I'm not just taking this claim.
All right.
Okay. I know. I do feel very sad with COVID that, I can't be sort of seeing as many people and bringing them cookies. So like, we really do have to sort of move along and get this vaccine going and whatnot. So we can,
stop eating cookies.
Yeah, exactly. Start baking cookies and sharing. It definitely is. So I would say the biggest tip. So the recipe, first of all, I didn't share that, sorry, is the Neiman Marcus cookie recipe. The rumor around the $250 Neiman Marcus cookie recipe. Look that up. Mm-hmm. It's actually chilling the dough.
Oh.
So that is honestly the biggest thing to making sure that the cookie is crispy on the outside and sort of chewy on the inside. If that's sort of like, I know people have different preferences around their chocolate chip cookies. I would say you need to chill the dough in the freezer for 20 minutes. And also the milk chocolate, the chocolate chips are huge too. I use milk chocolate chips.
Not semi-sweet.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Absolutely not.
Got it. All right.
Those
Yeah,
are the
maybe
tips.
semi-sweet tastes, they may not melt as much, so they don't add to the chewiness.
Yeah.
Would add to the chewiness.
Yeah.
All right. 2 really great tips today, along with all the work that you're doing in equity, diversity, and inclusion. Good stuff. All right. Well, thanks so much, Steph, for being on today and sharing your 3 uniques. I'm sure people will find that of value. And also just knowing that, you know, folks like yourself are getting out on video and sharing your 3 uniques. That's my biggest encouragement to everybody, is to get out there. Because even though you may be looking for that great job and you're applying for positions online or, you know, through job boards, etc., there's still a lot of, you know, in this day and age, there's still a lot of jobs that kind of come through word of mouth, or people create opportunities for people just like you. Your uniqueness needs to shine through. So get it out there on social media. We have all these platforms at our fingertips, and a lot of times people don't use them to their advantage in their job search. So thanks, Steph, for sharing your 3 uniques to us with us today. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks so much. Take care, everyone.
Okay.